Welcome to the power of protein in our diet. I call this my 8 power protein principles. They're bullet points for strength, vitality, and weight control. They also help point me in the direction to a longer, healthier life. And I imagine if you're here, you'd like to do the same thing. Protein is one of the several important topics we cover in my full cooking course, where you can go from feeling frustrated with eating so many packaged, ultra-processed foods that leave you bloated and at risk for chronic disease, to feeling confident in cooking nutrient-rich whole foods in 5 easy-to-repeat steps for a longer, healthier life. The average American diet is 80 grams or less of amino-rich proteins. Long-standing research on humans says we need about 125 grams on average. This shortfall contributes to muscle loss, weight gain, and accelerated aging. The good news? We are each empowered to change this with the foods that we eat, and we do this in our cooking course together, with over 50 easy-to-repeat recipes for cooking amino-rich proteins as a way of life. As a certified health coach through the Institute of Functional Medicine, talking proteins is one of my favorite topics, and I've done a great deal of research into this subject with doctors and scientists who are leaders in their field. As you will hear, having amino-rich proteins in our diet helps correct muscle loss and body composition. There are 8 important key steps to doing this successfully. Our body can either be in a catabolic state, muscle breakdown, also known as accelerated aging, or it can be in an anabolic state, muscle synthesis, stacking the deck in our favor for a longer, healthier life, doing the things we enjoy. Here are my 8 power protein principles, bullet points to strength, vitality, and weight control. But first, let's be honest. This topic can be controversial. For many reasons, the view of eating amino-rich animal proteins has become charged in recent years, and I understand. We are all learning as we go, and we are each guided in our diets by a wide range of conditions. The needs of our body, our belief systems, our budgets, our cultures, and even our companions. You will discover what works for you, and that is the most important diet there is. And then it will change. Our bodies change, our needs, our beliefs, and our budgets. So I compassionately suggest that we hold things lightly, learn to listen to our bodies, and patience to discover what works for our vision of optimal health. On this topic of dietary protein, I turn to the respected research of Dr. Don Layman. He's renowned for his decades-long work in the field of protein and its effects on humans. I've included links below so you can hear directly from him yourself. He is clear when he says, quote, "Basically, if your muscles are healthy, you've got a pretty good chance of a healthy life by avoiding metabolic disease, obesity, diabetes, cancer, and so much more." So, what I call the 8 power protein principles that just may change your life. I know they changed mine for the better. And we may need to break this class into 2 parts so it's easily digestible, but it's that important. Power protein number 1, eat 125 grams of amino-rich proteins each day. Protein can't be stored in the body like carbs and fat, so it needs to be replenished every day. Whether you're 16 or 65 years old, every tissue in the body undergoes turnover. Carbs and fats are energy sources. In contrast, protein feeds your liver, your brain, kidneys, and gut. And you need enough to activate muscle synthesis. Research shows that for adults, certainly 40 years and older, but probably 35 and older, the recommended protein intake, on average, is 125 grams per day. Specifically, it should be close to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. For example, I weigh about 133 pounds right now, approximately 60 kilograms. That times 1.8 is 108 grams of protein I need each day. And the higher our physical activity, the more protein we need. So I do cardio and strength training each day, or at least I try to, so I round that 108 up. The average American diet is 80 grams or less of amino-rich proteins. This shortfall contributes to muscle loss, weight gain, and accelerated aging. The good news, we are each empowered to change this with the foods that we eat, and why eating protein is one of the cornerstones of our cooking course together. I give you dozens of easy-to-repeat recipes for cooking amino-rich proteins as a weekly staple. Power protein principle number 2. Know that 4 grams of chicken is not 4 grams of protein. This can be confusing because we're using the same word, protein, to describe two different things: the nutrient called protein and the food called protein. Basically, it comes down to this. Protein content is measured in grams, not the total volume of food. For example, 4 ounces of boneless chicken provides about 23 grams of the nutrient protein. To determine how much protein nutrients are in a given food, you can use an app like Chronometer and a simple kitchen food scale. Even if you don't want to weigh and measure all your food, and I get it, consider tracking just your protein intake for a few days. See what you're averaging. In my experience, almost everyone is eating far less amino-rich protein than they think. I'll save you some time to get you started with protein data from a few common foods. These values are based on raw meat at 4 ounces each. Ground beef, 85% lean, is 21 grams of protein. Chicken thighs, boneless, 23 grams. Pork shoulder, 21 grams. A New York strip of steak is 25 grams. Venison is 24, salmon 25, shrimp 15, and 1 large chicken egg is 6 grams of protein. Oh, and 1 cup of bone broth is 10 grams. You can find values for plant-based sources of protein on your app. So if you're striving for the recommended average of 125 grams, like I am, here's how I'm doing it as of today as an example. For my first meal of the day, which is very important, as I'll explain in a minute, I warm up 1 cup of bone broth, a handful of amino-rich protein leftovers, usually one of my 5 favorite go-to meat braises, 2 eggs over easy, all over a bed of warmed, fiber-filled, nutrient-rich greens. Together, about 44 grams of amino-rich proteins to start my day. For my midday meal, when I eat, I include 4-ounce piece of say chicken at 22 grams of protein in a big bowl of plants. But honestly, I'm usually full or busy and don't always get to this, so it's an area I'm working on. I too am a work in progress. And for the last meal of the day, 6 to 8 ounces of whatever beef, poultry, or fish I can quickly saute for the evening for about 40 grams of protein. This totals 110 grams of amino-rich protein for the day. I'll show you more about how I prepare these foods in the full cooking course. Okay, let's talk protein quality. Power protein principle number 3. Eat foods with the amino acid leucine. In reality, we don't need protein in our diet. We need nutrients, specifically essential amino acids. One of the most important of those is leucine, because it's the key to activating muscle synthesis. It's the key that helps turn on mTOR, just like we need a key to turn on the engine in our car. We need mTOR turned on for muscle synthesis. We'll talk more about this in a minute. Maybe think of it like this. Protein is a vitamin pill. We don't have a daily requirement for vitamin pills, right? Rather, we have a requirement for the individual vitamins in the pill. In the same way, we don't have a daily requirement for protein as much as we have a requirement for the amino acids contained within the protein. And just so we don't ignore the other essential amino acids, it's a pretty good rule of thumb that if you're getting enough leucine, you're getting enough of all the rest too. Animal source proteins, such as beef, pork, chicken, fish, and eggs, all contain the essential amino acids that humans need. It's because animal meat has a similar amino acid protein balance to humans. Also, digestion and absorption of animal proteins are typically high, like around 95%. Plant-based proteins have a digestion and absorption rate closer to about 60 to 70%, mostly due to the hard-to-absorb fiber on the plants. Also, vitamin B12, essential for blood and brain health, as well as energy, is primarily found in animal meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Essential amino acids are necessary building blocks for our bodies, and we can't produce them on our own. They must come from our diet. And I'll show you how in our full cooking course. Power protein principle number 4. Eat at least 30 grams of protein for your first meal. Turns out when you eat protein matters. Dr. Layman says this: the most important change people can make is getting protein into the first meal of their day. While you sleep, you're fasting. Muscle activity decreases significantly, right? Yet other organs continue to function normally. For example, the liver remains active, producing proteins and constantly renewing enzymes. To support vital organ functions while you sleep, amino acids are required. During the night, these amino acids are sourced from muscle tissue, leading to muscle breakdown. This is called the catabolic state. Dr. Layman recommends a protein intake of 30 to 50 grams for the first meal after the overnight fast, regardless of whether your first meal is at 6 a.m. or 11 a.m. It should be rich in amino acids. Having at least 30 grams of protein in the first meal of the day is needed to activate muscle synthesis. In other words, your body needs 30 grams to transition from muscle breaking down to building back up, from a catabolic state to an anabolic state. 10 grams of protein is considered your burn calories, feeding your liver, brain, kidneys, and gut. But it's not enough to activate muscle synthesis. If you don't have at least 30 grams of protein at a meal, you can't turn on muscle synthesis. So when we eat protein in the first meal of the day, when we come out of our fast, we immediately correct muscle loss and correct body composition. In the standard American diet, also known as SAD, unfortunately, the average American eats 65% of their protein at one meal, late in the day, and mostly eats sugar for breakfast, in the form of bread, muffins, bagels, cereal, and even sweetened yogurt, which, by the way, has more sugar in it than a can of Coke. The average American breakfast is somewhere between 75 to 100 grams of carbs and about 10 grams of protein, which puts the body in a catabolic state, muscle breakdown most of the day. This is also called accelerated aging. Oh, and it may be helpful to know, research shows that protein over 50 grams at any given meal doesn't really make a big difference. So for those of you overachievers, know that the sweet spot is between 30 and 50 grams of protein per meal, with an average overall goal of 125 grams of amino-rich proteins per day on average. Dr. Layman likes to see people get 45 to 50 grams at the first meal, the same at the last meal, and that leaves about 20 to 35 midday, depending on how you're trying to control calories. That's the pattern he personally uses.